Hey everyone, welcome back to Build. I'm your host, Master Tisfatian, senior writer at Bleacher Report and host of BR's Untold Stories. It is officially college football bowl season, which means the college football playoff has been set. Here to talk more about the matchups and the Heisman race is Joel Klatt, Fox Sports lead college football analyst. Please welcome Joel to the Build studio.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the great time of the year right now.
Yes, this is it.
When you get to watch college football nonstop while your family and friends are around the house and trying to enjoy the holiday season. But we'll start off with the college football playoff. As I mentioned earlier, it's been set. 4 teams in, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma. Really no surprises there, but what's your biggest takeaways from the way it was set?
Well, when it first started unraveling this way, or not unraveling, kind of revealing itself this way, this season in particular, I was just thankful that we had a playoff. It wasn't that long ago that Clemson would have been left out of this entire discussion and not allowed to defend their national championship. So
crazy.
It is wild. So while people take shots at the playoff and they don't like it and get disgruntled with the system that we're in right now, I'm thankful that we have it because, like I said, Clemson not being allowed to compete for a national championship would be a travesty this year with a 28-game winning streak and being the defending national champion with their quarterback back and everything along those lines. Then outside of that, you're right. For the first time in its history, the 6-year history, we didn't have much controversy about which 4 teams were actually included into the playoff. I think if there was any controversy whatsoever or conversation, I think is a better way to put it, it would be at that number 1 spot between LSU and Ohio State and which team was going to be ranked number 1 by the committee. It went back and forth in the last few weeks of the playoff committee rankings, and then finally they settled on LSU after their dominant win over Georgia.
It's almost like they were the number 1 seed was prominent here because you got to avoid Clemson.
That's right.
And to me, I think a lot of people are still sleeping on Clemson. You had touched on it earlier, but they have just continued to be dominant this entire season. Why is Clemson not getting the respect it deserves?
Well, I don't know if it's – this is such a great question. Master Dabo talks about – Dabo Sweeney is their head coach, and he talks about this all the time, this lack of respect, this chip on their shoulder type of deal. And I don't think it's necessarily a matter of lack of respect as much as it is you have to rank them appropriately based on what they've achieved via their resume. Okay, and I know that sounds crazy, in particular if you're an NFL fan, because you're like, what does it matter, right? You win, you lose, then you go to the playoffs. Well, in college football, there's like one part winning and losing, and then the other part is like figure skating, because you got to look the part, you've got to have some sort of subjective eye test that goes into ranking these teams. Part of that is your schedule and what schedule you've played, how tough that schedule is. And Clemson's schedule is just not that difficult. The reason being their conference is not very difficult. The ACC is so bad, right? So Clemson gets this, they get this chip on their shoulder because they say, no one respects us. And it's like, well, actually, we respect you. We just don't respect your conference. And so that's why Clemson is always considered kind of the 3rd place team among those really good teams, LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson. And then that's why it's important to be the number 1 seed, because now LSU doesn't have to play the Clemson Tigers, who have a 28-game win streak, Trevor Lawrence, who likely will be the number 1 pick in the draft, and next year's draft, I guess next year's draft is this next draft. So like 2 drafts from now, he's going to be the number 1 pick at the quarterback position. That's why it's so interesting. But that's why I love college football, is because we get to talk about it subjectively.
That's got to be, I would think, the strongest number 3 seed we've seen so far in the college football playoff. And it's a very impressive 3, and I'll even include Oklahoma in this, a very impressive 4-team playoff that we have this season. We'll start with LSU. LSU was ranked number 1. An impressive performance despite the injuries that Georgia faced in the SEC championship game. Why did LSU deserve to be number 1?
Well, I think that the committee looked at their overall strength of schedule, and they looked at their win over Auburn. They looked at their win against Alabama. They looked at their win against Texas A&M and Georgia, and they just said, listen, at the top end, LSU was the better team. Then they also looked dominant at the end of the season, in particular that win against Georgia in the SEC championship game. Meanwhile, Ohio State, who had been dominant early in the season, in the middle part of the season, they finished up with the difficult stretch of 3 straight AP top 10 teams, AP ranked top 10 teams. And there was about 3 halves of football where they didn't play great. over those 3 games. And I think that's what allowed LSU to replace them as the number 1 team. Plus, you've also got the fact that we love stars, and Joe Burrow is a star. And he's likely going to be the Heisman Trophy winner. He's the quarterback for LSU. He was fantastic against Georgia, and I think in voters' minds and in this committee's mind. So if you don't know, there's 13 people that sit in the room that give us these rankings. I know it's kind of crazy, but that's how we do it in college football. And I think that they were impressed with what Joe Burrow was able to do against Georgia and that Georgia defense. That Georgia defense was giving up 10.5 points per game coming into that game, and LSU made them look silly, and that ultimately carried the day for them.
You are a Heisman voter.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Is Burrow your Heisman winner this season?
Okay, so the Heisman Trust, honestly, they will take my vote away if I tell you exactly how I voted.
You can't talk like
I'll
that?
tweet it out Monday, next Monday. But I will tell you, I'll be shocked if he doesn't win. I'll be absolutely shocked. If you don't know, so there's about 1,000 of us across the country that vote for the Heisman Trophy. And we vote for three places, so your first, your second, and your third place vote. I'll be really surprised if Joe Burrow's not the runaway favorite because he's going to get a lot of first-place votes. What's interesting to me is the prestige and the honor of being a Heisman finalist is up in the air because there's 5 or 6 different guys that I think could also be Heisman finalists. And Master, that's big for their schools and programs. That's Absolutely. Big for them personally.
Their legacy.
The legacy of being a Heisman finalist at any program really is a big deal. And so pay attention to who the Heisman Trust brings to New York as a finalist. You're going to have guys like Justin Fields, the quarterback at Ohio State, in that mix. Chase Young, the defensive end at Ohio State. J.K. Dobbins, the running back at Ohio State. All those Ohio State guys.
And wide receiver from Ohio State, a quarterback.
Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma. Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Wisconsin. Like I said, any number of those guys could be Heisman finalists. My hope is that they bring 4 or 5 of them as finalists so that they can have the honor of being rewarded with a trip to New York, be a Heisman, because you're forever known. That's the thing, guys. When you go back and you travel around to these programs, they have these beautiful pieces on the wall and pictures, and it says like Heisman finalist 2004. These kids are honored for the rest of their life so they can bring their kids back. And these amazing murals are on the walls of these facilities. That's why I hope that they will invite them to New York as finalists because I think it's a big deal.
You mentioned Chase Young. And to me, in this golden era that we've seen of pass rushers, he's probably one of the most dominant pass rushers I've ever seen in college football. What is it eventually going to take for a defensive player to win the Heisman?
I thought he had as good a chance as any going into the last couple of weeks of the season after his performance against Penn State. So if you don't know, the last player who played predominantly defense to win the Heisman Trophy was in the late 90s when Charles Woodson, your jersey right there. You got his Oakland jersey on. When he was at Michigan, he beat out Peyton Manning and Randy Moss. How about that for Heisman finalists, by the way?
Incredible.
An incredible list of Heisman. And we have seen guys be finalists since then that played defense, like Manti Te'o from Notre Dame. We had the Honey Badger, Matthew from LSU. And Ndamukong Suh was a lineman from Nebraska. Monster. He was a finalist. So we've had a few guys. Chase had a chance. I think Chase is going to be a finalist this year. And in and of itself, as a defensive player, that's an incredible honor. He had this momentum going after the Penn State game. So the Penn State game was the next to last game of the regular season. He came out and he had 4 sacks in that game. And I thought to myself, man, he might win the Heisman Trophy. He had the Michigan game, which was going to have a giant viewership, and then he had the Big Ten championship game ahead of him. I thought that if he were to get multiple sacks in each one of those games, he would have a chance. But he didn't have any sacks in each of those 2 games, which means that he's going to get passed and Joe Burrow is going to win the Heisman Trophy. But Chase, to your point, I've covered college football since 2007. Yeah, 2007, right after my playing career. He's the most dominant defensive player that I've covered. Wow. And so when you're looking for the future...
That's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he could be the first pick in the draft. He's incredible.
Speaking of Chase Young, obviously you touched on Ohio State. You were there at the Big Ten championship game when Ohio State came back in the second half and defeated Wisconsin. But Ohio State fans, it seems like every single year during the college football playoff, they feel like they were jobbed in some type, shape, form, or fashion.
Yeah.
They felt strongly that they should have been the number one seed in the college football playoff. Do you feel like they had a strong case to become the number one overall seed? And what does it look like now when you're looking at that matchup of Ohio State versus Clemson, which should be incredible?
So let's start with their spot in the rankings. I would have argued that they deserve the number one spot. They were the more complete team versus LSU during the course of the season. Offensively, defensively, special teams, they were more dominant. They were number one in point differential during the course of the year. They're really, really good. They also have more wins against ranked opponents than LSU does. In fact, their margin of victory against ranked opponents is far higher than what LSU's is.
And these are stats that the committee strongly looks at, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This is all, they get into the weeds. Trust me. It gets real nerdy in there real quick. That's why I wear a collar and a sweater, is because we're kind of nerdy in college football. But they had a great argument, and it went the other direction. I really do believe that the narrative surrounding the SEC really works for them. The narrative around their quality wins and their quality opponents, it carries the day a lot of times. And what people fail to realize is that Ohio State's end of the season stretch was much more difficult than any stretch that even LSU played during the course of the season. For example, they played 3 straight teams on consecutive weeks that were AP top 10 teams in the AP poll, Penn State, Michigan, and then Wisconsin. And they beat them all. The last time we've seen a team do that in college football, 3 consecutive weeks over top 10 teams, was 1983 when Bo Jackson's Auburn Tigers did it.
Wow.
Here's where the narrative starts to change. A lot of people talking about college football will talk immediately about Ohio State maybe struggled in a half or two during that course of game, the course of those 3 games. If that was an SEC team, they would talk about how unbelievable it was that they went through that stretch undefeated. Not only undefeated, but they won every one of those games by double-digit points. So margin of victory played into that. Everywhere else around the country doesn't give that benefit of the doubt. That's one of the beauties of what the SEC has done surrounding the narrative of their conference, and they've done a heck of a job. And LSU is a great team, a really, really great team, and I can't wait to watch that play out in the playoffs. Then quickly you asked me about the matchup. Clemson and Ohio State, I think it's about a coin flip. Like if I were in Vegas, I would be like, where's my, $25 bet? I'm not a big better, and I don't really bet anyways, but like, where's it going? Where's my $20 going? It would be about a coin flip for me. I'll probably lean towards Ohio State because I think their offense can carry the day because they can run the football, but that's going to be one of the best games of the entire season in college football. At least I hope it is. The matchup on paper looks that way.
Because Clemson can run the ball too, and that offense is just as potent, it's just as dominant. So many NFL prospects that will be on that field.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that. And I agree with you. I think that will end up being the college football game of the year.
Let's hope.
And then number 4, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They had a great game against Baylor in the Big 12 championship. Allowed them to propel to the number 4 seed, obviously because Oregon was able to upset Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. With Oklahoma at number 4, fortunate to be there given the way the dominoes fell. What do you expect out of Oklahoma in the college football playoff?
I don't think they have anything to lose, so I think you're going to see them throw the kitchen sink at LSU because none of us are going to expect them to beat LSU. They've got a great coach, Lincoln Riley. He's one of the stars. In fact, those of you that are NFL fans, I think you might see Jerry Jones try to go and steal Lincoln Riley and throw a bunch of money at him,
I'm from Dallas. I'm a big Cowboys fan. Don't let the Raiders jersey confuse you.
Okay.
I hope they get Lincoln.
See,
I'm a huge
That's what everyone says. Are you a Cowboys fan as well? Okay, so you hope they get Lincoln Riley?
Lincoln Riley with Dak Prescott? Oh, that'd be incredible. Ezekiel Elliott?
He's good. He's good. Lincoln's one of the best offensive coaches I've ever been around. Great guy. Wonderful family man. It'll be interesting to see if he leaves, but he's the leader of that team now. As they prepare for this game, the noise around his future, I think, will get bigger and louder and louder. And I don't know if that's going to distract them to a point where they don't play well or not. Their story is so fascinating because of their quarterback. Oklahoma has been there. It was going to be like, hey, 3 straight playoffs, 4 out of 5 for them in the playoff, which is all well and good. But Jalen Hurts transfers from Alabama because he lost his job to Tua Tagovailoa, who ended up fracturing his hip.
One of the most unfortunate story of the season.
There's no doubt about it.
100%.
But Jalen's this incredible story of a kid that he didn't whine and cry. He didn't pout. He didn't go to the media and say, woe is me, when he lost his job. He just kind of said, like, hey, whatever I can do to help the team. And so he's become this, like, folk hero in Alabama country for how he handled his demotion from the starting quarterback role. And they loved him. And then they applauded him saying, like, hey, I'm a graduate. I'm going to go transfer for my last season. They were like, hey, good on you. Go do it. And now he's in the playoff, and they're not. And it's just like, it's kind of a wild.
The first time in the college football playoff history, we have not seen Alabama.
That's right.
In the college football playoff.
That's right. And he's a wonderful, wonderful kid. He's smart. He understands leadership really well. And I just have a feeling that you're going to see him play his best. They'll play their best. And it wouldn't surprise me if they give LSU a little bit of a struggle in that game. I don't think that they'll win the game, but they're going to throw the kitchen sink at him. There's no doubt.
He seems so composed this season. Even after they won the Big 12 championship game, you literally saw him on the sideline. Everyone else is losing their minds on the Oklahoma sideline. He's just standing there, just almost soaking it all in, and just showing no display of emotion until Lincoln Riley comes over and tackles him. It's really impressive to see what he's been able to accomplish at Oklahoma and how quickly he's been able to adapt to a completely different program.
He is an incredible, incredible person. Mature, smart. He understands his position on that team and his position in college football as a leader and a role model. I love Jalen Hurts. I wish him nothing but the best.
All right, I'm gonna need your take. I'm gonna need your opinions now. Okay. LSU, Oklahoma, who you got?
I'm going to lean LSU there.
All right, so you've got LSU in the national championship game, and you've got them facing who between Ohio State and Clemson?
I'm going to pick Ohio State. I think that game is going to be incredibly close, and I think that we're going to have an Ohio State-LSU national championship game in New Orleans, which is
that might be a home field advantage.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we might as well just go to Baton Rouge and play this game. But I think that's what it's going to be.
And your national champion for this season between LSU and Ohio State is?
I don't know. I think it'll be really difficult to beat LSU in New Orleans. I really do. And Joe Burrow, so the backstory in that game, everybody, Joe Burrow transferred from Ohio State because he got beat out by Dwayne Haskins, who's now in the NFL. So Burrow had a couple of years left. He transfers to LSU. That's secretly why I really want Ohio State to, because I want to see LSU play Ohio State. I want to see Joe Burrow have to play his old teammates. There's all sorts of pictures of like spring football and practice where like Chase Young is trying to sack Joe Burrow in practice, and they're both in Ohio State uniforms, and I want to see that actually happen on the field. It'd be really hard to beat LSU in the national championship game in New Orleans. That would be difficult, even for a great team like Ohio State or Clemson.
I'm going to agree with you. I think it's going to be LSU.
Yeah.
Only subtle difference I have, I think Clemson's going to beat Ohio State. But again, either way, I'm just hoping for a great game because I'm a huge fan of both teams, and I think there's so much talent on both teams, and it will be a very, very fascinating match.
We've never seen – it's only been 5 times, but we've never seen a number 1 team win the national championship in this playoff format. LSU's got a great chance. We both just kind of picked them here, so maybe that was the curse.
Clemson's going to come back and prove us all wrong, and Dabo's going to say, I told you so.
Exactly. There's no doubt.
Before we turn to the audience, which I believe we have questions here in a minute, I've got to ask you, I went to Arizona State.
That's
I'm a Sun Devil alum. Huge Sun Devil fan. What Herm Edwards is doing there, they had a big upset against Oregon to close out the season. Going to play in the Sun Bowl against Florida State,
Yep.
who just got Mike Norvell, former Arizona State offensive coordinator, as their new head coach. What is the future like for me as a Sun Devil fan? What can I expect from this program moving forward with Herm Edwards and Jaden Daniels at quarterback?
Daniels is a special player. He really is. I think Jaden Daniels is a really talented player. I love what Herm's been able to do. He's toughened them up. They play much better defense than they had in the past. But college football is all about recruiting. It's all about recruiting. You can tell exactly who's going to be good in 3 years by just going to see who's signing the best players right now, these 18-year-olds out of high school. And that's actually where Arizona State has struggled a little bit. They're not getting the best players in the state of Arizona. For example, last year they lost the number one player in the state. His name's Spencer Rattler. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He went to Oklahoma. There's other guys that are going to Ohio State. Texas gets a couple. They got to keep those kids in state. Every school in the country, if you're going to have any success, whether it's Colorado where I went, USC in Southern California, Texas in the state of Texas, Ohio State in Ohio, you have to put gates around your state, kind of the imaginary gates where it's like the best players in our state come here. They know our program. They love our program, whether it's 3, 4, 20 kids from the state. If they're good enough to play here, they need to come here, and that's what Arizona State has to do.
I hope everyone always talks about how it's a sleeping giant, and they've got
it's got all those good players in the Phoenix area.
Beautiful, great players, beautiful weather. It's a great campus facility. I'm hoping at some point we could be in this conversation.
That would be great.
Football playoffs someday.
I would love that as well. My best friend went to Arizona State, so I got a soft spot.
You hang out with great people, man.
That's right. I've got good judgment. Good judge of character right here. That's right.
We're going to take some questions from the audience. We've got 2 questions from the audience we'll start off with.
Hi.
Hi. I was curious what your biggest surprise or upset this season has been.
Well, he touched on one of them when Arizona State beat Oregon. That would be one of them. And then the biggest upset, I thought, and Vegas thought as well, was when Illinois beat Wisconsin earlier in the season. You could make an argument that Ohio State beat Wisconsin 3 times because Illinois beat them right before they were about to play Ohio State, and then Ohio State beat them twice on the field. I thought they were looking forward to the Ohio State game back there in October, and so that was the biggest upset for me. And by the way, Lovie Smith, Illinois' head coach, has done a remarkable job. They're bowl eligible. They got 6 wins, and they're going to go to a bowl game, so good on Illinois. But that was the biggest upset I remember.
I forgot he was there until that game, and I was watching and looking at myself
like that white
when
beard?
He get that? Yeah, exactly. That white beard.
When did Lovie Smith get a gray beard? What happened?
That threw me off.
He's got like a Santa beard. It's amazing.
We've got one more question from the audience.
Hello.
Hi.
So when you're not a sports analyst, what is something you like to do in your free time?
Oh, great question. I love to play golf. That's if it's just an activity for me, I love to play golf. And then I absolutely love spending time with my little boys. I've got a 7, 5, and 2-year-old boy. And just spending time with them. Their favorite thing is wrestling. So basically I just sit there and they jump on me, and then we just kind of like roll around. Then they jump on me some more, and then inevitably someone ends up crying. Mom's mad, and we have to stop.
Thank you.
You bet.
That's a great question there. And Joel, thanks for spending the time with us.
You bet.
You got a big week this week with the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
The Heisman will be announced this weekend, and then from there it's bowl season.
Master, I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time.
You got it.